and Yawn Radio.
One of 900 radio stations, 300 TV stations, 4 networks, 3 satellites, 10 senators.
Thank you! Thank you!
Jett and Yawn Radio.
Hey folks, welcome to yet another Jett and Yawn show. Today we'll be listening to what Jett has to say about his research. He's been away for a while. What have you been studying, Jett?
Well, Mike, I've been taking some time off, and I've been reading over 10,000 documents, and there's still more to go. And we should probably tell people here what the hell we're talking about. We're talking about the incident that occurred on 4/20/99. It was Hitler's 110th birthday. This day has a lot of significance. It's Hitler's birthday. It's kind of, unofficial marijuana day. It's, Waco? If we have older listeners, younger listeners probably don't know what Waco is. Essentially, Waco, we're not going to talk about it, but we'll do it real quick for you young listeners. Waco was when the FBI in, the 90s just burnt this fucking house down and shot everybody. It was crazy. Yeah. And then that led to the Oklahoma City bombing on April 20th, because he did it for retribution of Waco. We don't know about that. Yeah. But we're not going to be talking about that stuff today. We're going to be talking about the Columbine shooting, which happened on 4/20/99.
Well, let me interrupt you, Jett. We have a guest here today.
Yeah, Pat. Oh, I'm sorry, Pat from.
Yeah. Hello.
Pat, Mike, and I are assholes. Pat, say hello, and why don't you tell the listeners where you're from?
Hello, I'm Patrick from the Netherlands.
Now, go ahead, Pat.
Well, that's about it. I wanted to say.
Now, we have him on here just to show you that Columbine was such a... I asked Pat casually before we did this. I was like, you ever hear of Columbine? He's like, hell yeah. So, if Europeans have heard about this, it's got to be a big event. And there were other shootings. We'll get into all this later. So, I'm sure you guys know the official story. Either of you want to run it down, or do you want me to?
Yeah, the two pissed off kids who got picked on shot a bunch of students in the school and had some pipe bombs with them. That's about it.
Yeah, that's pretty much the official story. Two pissed off kids decide one day they're gonna shoot the school up, and they got 100 pipe bombs. Which you mentioned pipe bombs. That's how many there were, 100. Now, before we get into this, let's wrap up the official story just so it goes. It's Harris, Klebold. They spontaneous school shooting. The original plan was to blow up the cafeteria with petrol tanks, and as the kids would run out, they'd shoot them. That didn't happen. The bombing of the school. They wanted to kill 500. That's what they thought they would actually kill. That's the official story. And also in the official story is they found in Eric Harris's diary. This is in 1999. And as Pat said, you're pushed to believe these kids were two bullied kids, which we'll dismantle that later. Yeah. But Eric Harris has in there, I want to hijack an airplane after I shoot the school up. I'm going to hijack an airplane and fly it into, New York City. I think the quote is shooting all the way. And, I never even heard of that until 9/11. That's something totally new to me, crashing planes into buildings. And he's talking about it. And it also doesn't fit the... I think everyone here could kind of understand the rationality behind, I'm going to shoot those guys who were mean to me. But then, why does this pissed off kid want to, fly a skyscraper, or fly a plane into a skyscraper in New York? That really doesn't make sense. And basically what happened is around 2000, 2001, a lot of the families of the victims were not happy at all with this, and the Jefferson County Police Department and other police departments that were involved with the investigation released about, I believe, 10 to 30,000 documents. Okay, I've read around 10,000. Their interviews. Some of them are, they're mostly interviews. The things they haven't released so far are like autopsies, body photos. We can get into that a little bit later. There apparently was bodies being moved, which, I don't know. As a result of the pissed off parents, there were Freedom of Information Acts, and all this information came out. And the beauty of this is that, people say, well, this is a conspiracy theory. Not really, because this is the police investigating it. And, there's up to 52. I mean, there's probably more witnesses, and a few have spoken out. And they're like, yeah, I shot 3 shooters. I saw 7 shooters. I saw 4 shooters. Okay?
Yeah.
And that cast doubt on the whole official story. And then, I've been talking and researching. I've been talking to people and researching about this, and the number one question I think I get is, why? Why would you cover this up? Like, it's a school shooting, and, parents are pissed. So if you could get, wouldn't it be great to say, yo, we messed up everything, but here's the other shooters?
Yeah. Who were the other shooters? People from the Trenchcoat Mafia or other people?
Okay, well, I'll just get I'll go down the names right now, and then the Trenchcoat Mafia is not exclusive to Columbine. There's a lot of reports. I'll get to that in a second. Basically, here's the shooters. So get a pen ready, kids, because these guys are. I robbed something. I take a candy bar out of the store. I'm going to jail. These guys shoot up the school. They're roaming around free. Here we go.
Yeah.
We got Chris Morris, who apparently is the leader of the Trenchcoat Mafia. Although there's a bunch of kids that are, they're all suspects, but they're all fighting over who started the Trenchcoat. And also, I'll mention at this point, in the Columbine files, there is a file, a group of files labeled Trenchcoat Mafia and Associates. So like the FBI and they had an agent going along with, I think it was paired an agent and a local sheriff, something like that. And, they knew of these guys. Why they didn't prosecute them? Why? I don't know. But here's the shooters. Chris Morris, Robert Perry, who, this is funny. Not funny. I mean, I feel horrible, but how does this happen? You have kids, and I don't mean 1 or 2, I mean more, saying yeah, this kid was shooting at me. He had really bad acne. He was tall, skinny. He did not have a leather trench coat. He had Klebold wore a leather trench coat, and coincidentally, I should say, these 2 kids kind of look like each other, except Klebold has no acne, and Perry has, according to reports, horrible acne. I don't want, if you have acne, it sucks, but pizza face, okay? You would make the distinction, He wasn't just 1 or 2. He was broken out. And all these kids are saying, yeah, this kid with, a coat and pigeon-toed walk, that was another thing he had that Klebold didn't, was shooting. They were shooting at me. And a few people even go yeah, I knew the kid. It's Robert Perry. He was in my debate class. So, I mean, what do we have here? We either have witnesses lying to get people they don't like, for whatever reason, in trouble. And, I mean, God, you'd have to be so calm and cool and heartless to actually, take advantage of that.
Yeah.
So these kids were panicked. You could hear it in the police. There's some reports and media reports. There's a lot of media reports where that's probably the best, where the media, a kid will come out of school and somebody will throw a mic in his hand. They'll be like, "What'd you see?" And he'll be like, "I saw 3 shooters." And then they're that totally we just like in 9/11. You had, well, what'd you see? Well, I heard pop, 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 which is inconsistent with the plane going into the building. So, to digress, you have all the witnesses' interviews. Kind of just got, as it goes down, as it went on. Sorry, guys. Let me finish the other shooters. You have a kid named Brian Sargent, called the round face shooter. Okay. A lot of kids described him as a round face. He had a pot bowl haircut, and he was kind of chubby. He was in the trench coat Mafia. He was, I believe, a junior. So, as I'm going to talk about one witness's comment in a second. This is the kid they're referring to specifically. Let's see. We also have Joe Stair. Joe Stair being probably the most interesting guy here, because this is where you're like, am I on to something? Am I on to something? And it's like, bam, I'm on to something. Joe Stair is an interesting fellow, and here's how it rolls. Most of the Trenchcoat Mafia were guys like Stair, Chris Morris, there's another guy, Tad Boyles, Eric Dutrow, Eric Alt, other kids like that, and they graduated or they dropped out, and they were the real violent ones. Like Klebold, and we'll get into this later. Klebold and Harris were basically, kind of like nerds. They played Doom, they watched The Matrix, stuff like that. But the ones that were, we're talking into Satan worship and cutting themselves and stuff like that, these are the guys, Joe Stair, and the other Chris Morris, all the ones I pretty much mentioned. They're the hardcore violent nuts. I mean, I didn't mention about Morris, but Morris was getting pulled up every day, pretty much. This is beautiful, because the school's like, yeah, we don't know anything. We never saw this coming. And Morris is getting pulled up every day for pulling knives on people, even other Trenchcoat Mafia members. So this guy is totally unstable. He couldn't even get along with his buddies or whatever.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead, Pat.
Klebold and Harris, were they actually in the Trenchcoat Mafia? I've heard they have had nothing to do with that group.
Yeah, Pat, as we've been, as I've been touching here, they were not, the guys I've mentioned before, the other possible shooters that witnesses say they saw, like Joe Stair, Morris, etc., they were the ones who were really, the violent ones, the bloodletting, the I worship Satan and the cult stuff.
Yeah.
And the other, Klebold and Harris were pretty much guys who played video games, were into the Matrix. They were a little weird, but they weren't as violent as Joe Stair. Now here's an interesting anecdote about Joe Stair. It's in the police reports. With, I believe, the kids, I forget the kid, I don't know the kid's name for sure, so whatever, but he's a jock. He's a jock, and it's around 97, 98, and Joe Stair and this other kid, Eric Dutrow, who I have no idea if he was a shooter, but it's possible, okay? He was in the Trenchcoat Mafia. He had dropped out, I believe, and he was like, Dutrow was involved in drugs, I believe. I'm not sure, but that's what the police were, that's what he told the cops. So, hey, Dutrow, you got a problem? Read your police reports. Or interviews, police interviews. But yeah, him and Dutrow playing cards, and a jock, they're playing, alright, excuse me guys, I'm slurring my words. They're playing cards, and the jock, you know how study hall is, there's a table here, a table here. Well, the jocks are at one table, Stair and another kid are playing cards. When all of a sudden, Joe Stair and Eric, not Harris, get up and they go over to the jock table and they're like, Satan loves you, Satan loves you, Satan loves you. And the jocks are like, yo, what the fuck? And then Dutro, and I believe it's Dutro. It's either Dutro or Alt, okay? I'm not sure, but their first name's both Eric, okay? And Joe Stair go back to their table and they say something like, hey, look over here. And then they start kissing. They start like man-on-man kissing. And the one jock kid, totally disgusted, gets up, pushes all their playing cards to the floor, and then about 2 months later, this kid is getting calls about every day or so. I'm not sure exactly, but he's getting a bunch of calls, and someone goes, I will kill you, and then like the German industrial music plays in the background. So, you know, we heard a lot about these kids being bullied, but as the Joe Stair thing, they went out of their way to intimidate. Also, on the Joe Stair note, there was an incident where he was entering again the cafeteria, and there were a bunch of jocks, and he started like dry humping one of his trench coat friends, and he was doing it, to get attention or whatever. And one of one of the jocks go, that's disgusting, or something. And he goes like, fuck you. This is in 1998 or 7, so keep this in mind. The attack occurred in 99. He goes like, fuck you, I'm going to shoot the school up and blow it up. So, you have the plan there 2 years before it occurs. And to finish the Joe Stair thing, in 2007, he committed suicide, except he hung himself. Except there was blood under his nose and under his body. That's not consistent with hanging. And he had also become very active on a number of there's only a few websites about Columbine that doubt the full story. And you got to wonder, was someone getting afraid he's going to spill the beans, And subsequently, his sister, who was in the school at the shooting, she came on the one site, and is like, Joe definitely was not a shooter, blah, 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 blah. Hey, it sounds kind of like somebody's got a gun to your head and saying, hey, make sure everybody knows. I'm going to do a little Italian here. Make sure nobody knows Joe was a shooter. Get on there. Say it. So, little humor, but
when did she come forward saying that Joe wasn't the shooter? Was it?
No, Pat. She doubts.
Oh,
she is saying, she is telling all the researchers, Joe was not a shooter. He was at home, and we have eyewitness reports saying yo, I saw Joe Stair on campus, and Joe Stair before Columbine, he was one of the kids specifically listed, not yo, you've been coming around here too much. You already graduated. Stop coming. So, I don't know. He didn't get past high school. And about the Trenchcoat Mafia, a lot of them were actually older. It didn't just reside in Columbine High School. It resided in nearby Chatfield, and I think there was another high school. And they all had this culture, and it was not. The bottom line is it was not exclusive to Columbine. Okay, it was a bunch of kids, and they were mostly older and graduated. And in one of the police reports, a kid they interview who doesn't really know much. He went to another high school. He doesn't really know much. He's like, yeah, the Trenchcoat Mafia is pretty big, actually. It's not just, limited to high schools. And I know this guy, they found pornographic pictures in his, or not pornographic homosexual pictures in his backpack, and he was a trench coater. And I mean his backpack, like when they picked him up to be interviewed, not at the shooting or anything. He wasn't even at the shooting. And he goes like, they're like, yo, dude, who gave you these? Because this was underage porn as well. It was child porn. So cops are going to take an interest in this stuff. You get it. And he goes, well, I got it from a much older guy who's in the trenchcoat mafia named Pedophile Bill. So you're kind of like, well, wait, there's adults now? And so, coincidentally, one of the shooters I didn't name, I'll name him now. He in the science halls, there's a few reports of kids seeing actually like an adult. They're like, yeah, he's not skinny, he's really buff. The one girl did a drawing. You can Google it. It's called like the chisel face shooter. And it doesn't look anything like Klebold or Harris. And she's like, no, I thought this guy, she tells investigators, she's like, I thought this guy was a cop until I saw him hold up a sawed-off shotgun at the window. So, if there's adults involved in this now, like, what's going on,
But if Klebold and Harris weren't really into the trenchcoat mafia, maybe it doesn't matter if there were adults or other people in the trenchcoat mafia.
Exactly. That is the question we face now. Is how did those people get these kids to take the blame? And I might alienate some people here, but if you look at the photo of Klebold and Harris lying on the ground, other researchers everything I'm telling you, other researchers have also pretty much told you, or not told you, but it's all been discovered. But this information just needs to really come out. The photo is interesting because there's blood on the one kid. I forget how. I don't like looking at gory photos, but it would appear that one of them shot himself laying down, and basically, for the way the photo appears, they would have been shot laying down. So the suicide or murder-suicide, like, yo, bro, here we go, that's totally ruled out, unless it's not possible to take a shotgun and shoot yourself on the floor. So it appears they, I mean, this is going to sound really weird, and I feel weird saying it, but it appears like, I don't know, they were moving bodies, which there's reports. There's been numerous reports of people saying that they saw bodies being moved, specifically with Rachel Scott. But, like, were Klebold and Harris shot on, laying down? I mean, I don't want to speculate, 'cause I want to stick to the facts. I mean, we could say, well, like, did somebody shoot them? And, well, I don't know. I mean, we have their official time of death around 12:10, yet people are still, like, hearing shots at, like, 2 o'clock, 1 p.m. So if they're dead at 12, pretty much like 12:08, I think their time of their death is. The shooting began at around 11:18. How are there still shots? And the police say, well, those were shot locks, which essentially is they were shooting locks off doors. But that conflicts with people like Patty Nielsen, who's like, I heard automatic weapons. Well, if you're shooting locks off doors, I don't think you need an AK-47, And to back up the automatic weapon fire, we have there was a nearby park, and I don't know, the janitor there or something, he was in Vietnam, and he's like, yeah, I know about I know what automatic weapons sounds like, and that was automatic weapons. And
didn't the police have crowbars or something like that? Shooting off locks looks like something to me that's typical in movies.
Yeah,
instead.
exactly. And
Nah, the police do that.
Oh,
well, they do it, but it doesn't explain the number of. You actually got to do too. You got to think about it like this: these people are in. They do it, but they're in like panic. Why would you? I don't like. Holy shit! If you shoot that gun, they're gonna think the killers are right outside.
yeah.
So, yeah, it could have been handled better. And when you start seeing, like, so many, Jet's not going to curse. I was going to say F-ups. But when you start seeing so many, like, mess-ups, this isn't random. It's not like, yo, it was just not our day, guys. We fucked up 60 things. No, the only time that happens is when there's a cover-up, okay? And, I don't know if this has hit Europe, but a lot of Americans, and I know Mike, you want to get in on this one here? The biggest thing was like, well, why aren't the SWAT teams going in? Remember that?
Yeah, it did seem like it was handled slowly.
Yeah, and the reason for that is some of them, law enforcement officers were saying, they thought they were facing up to 8 to 12 gunmen, and they thought they might be outgunned. So, how do they explain that? And then the FBI's there in 20 minutes? Holy crap! The FBI, they're there in 20 minutes. And then, I looked in the agencies responding to the Columbine event, and the United States Army is listed. And, I heard, some people were like, yeah, I saw a 5-star general, and you're like, yeah, that guy's just he's a conspiracy nut job. But apparently, the Army was there. I don't know why they would be there. I mean, it's just a school shooting. Shouldn't it just the police and then the FBI after the event? The FBI's there 20 minutes. There was a lot of pre-knowledge about this event. You had a kid who was in Bowling for Columbine, the big movie that came, that doesn't even talk about Columbine. It was pushing for gun laws in America, trying to strip away the Second Amendment. And this kid, Brooks Brown, he was overheard earlier in the year saying yeah, something big's gonna happen on 420. And this is the kid, if I'm saying him by name, but if you don't know, he's the one that famously Harris was like, yo, we had some shit, but I like you now. Get on out of here. Go. So, and then, he's like, oh, okay, I'm going to run now. So his life's spared, kind of. And in the police reports, a lot of the police, at the end it says conclusion. It's we believe Brooks is holding back evidence. And also a lot of these shooters I mentioned failed polygraphs. And their alibi for, where were you? Pretty weak. Family, friends, a lot of them were the ones that were in school took the day off, sleeping in school, or took the day off, stayed at home. I mean, that's not a good alibi, I mean, that'll get you hung up in a murder rap. But one thing I want to talk about, which no other researcher has brought about to light, is these guys, the trench coaters, were very into the internet. And, they had internet friends they'd call each other, and I don't know what they talk about, but whatever. And the one kid that Chris Morris played a video, I think Doom or Quake or whatever online with, he called Morris around 12, and he was like, hey, dude, I see your school's getting shot up. Are you okay? Whatever. And the police interviewed this kid. and he was from Texas. I think his name's Brian Johnson. And Johnson goes, well, he goes, yeah, I talked to Chris. I called him at 12. Normally, Chris is really talkative and real caring, but he was like, I don't even want to talk. And basically, he's like, I don't want to talk. I don't. He was just very numb and not himself. And the way Johnson said, like the way the police report reads, because I don't have it on me verbatim, it's not like Morris is upset, like, oh my god, my classmates are dying. It's like, holy shit, I just got out of there in a blast. Like, I got out of there real fast. And Chris Morris actually got arrested and then let go. And witnesses, there's this kid, Chris Wisher, and he's one of the more outspoken witnesses. And he was on a soccer field, okay? And you gotta understand, Columbine's so affluent, okay? So they had video systems inside, all this stuff. And they had a soccer field, they had a soccer field. And, you know, he's outside eating lunch. This was, you know, you could eat lunch wherever. It's a totally white school, or pretty much white and Jewish. With that said, there's no Jewish conspiracy in that. Only Klebold was quarter Jewish. Anyway, he sees two guys in trench coats and a guy in a white shirt and blue jeans. And he sees the kid in blue jeans throw a pipe bomb on the roof and explodes. And then he sees one of the trench coaters go to shoot at him and his friends, and they take off. They don't get hit, whatever. The police, or excuse me, the news media comes up to him, and they're like, what just happened? And he's like, I saw two guys in trench coats, one guy in a white shirt. The guy in the white shirt threw a bomb on the roof or something that exploded. It looked like a can, and then two guys shot at me and my friends. And, you know, you're like, okay, right there, there's three of them, bam. And that gets totally swept under the rug. And when Chris Morris is getting arrested, the media goes to Wisher. They go, is that one of the kids shooting at you, who was shooting at you? And he's like, I can't say, like, you could tell he was afraid for, I don't know, legal reasons, whatever. You know, he's a young kid. He doesn't know what to say regarding, you know, if you could say names or not. And he's like, I don't know, but, like, that kid was definitely shooting at me. So, you know, there's a kid saying, like, I saw him shoot at me. So, in regards to more shooters, definitely, most definitely. And the cover-up comes... It's interesting who they put in charge of this event. The guy's name is Dwayne Fusilier. I never heard his name pronounced, but that's how I say it. Dwayne Fusilier, or Fusilier. And he had two kids. He had one kid who was like, I don't know, he was young, and he was in the school that day. And then he had an older kid who was actually in the Trenchcoat Mafia. He had graduated around, I believe, 97, okay? Like I said, most of them were older. And he was involved in a video, I'm sure you've all seen it. Definitely Americans have. You know, all the videos of Harris and Klebold and shooting guns in the woods, and, you know, going up the one video they made for, they had an audio video class, and they liked it a lot. And they mostly made violent films, or, you know, whatever. And a lot of the plots were, you know, like trenchcoat mafia guys saving dorks from jocks. And the one tape's Hitman for Hire. And it's basically what I just said. But then we have this tape that's I don't believe it's ever been released. And it involves the lead FBI investigator's son, the older son. And in it, there is shooting in the school, and at the end, the school blows up. So you're like, holy shit, they're making videos about this in 97? Or, years before? And that's the lead FBI investigator's son, who was in charge of that video production. So, how can we expect an honest investigation?
After Columbine, school shootings became very notorious. Were they before Columbine notorious as well, or maybe that it's more normal for students to say, "I'm gonna blow up the school or shoot up a class of students"?
More normal after Columbine?
Yeah.
Definitely. There were a few cases before Columbine. Yeah. But actually, before Columbine, we have a lot of movies where a guy's wearing a trench coat shooting up schools. And that's really weird. Because you got to say, well, if this is getting pushed, you know what I mean? If this is... this is the Jett Yon Show, guys, and special host Pat. We know about media and who controls the media. So if these I'll give you two movies examples: The Basketball Diaries, where Leonardo DiCaprio is wearing a trench coat, shoots up his school. It's like a dream or something. He shoots up his school wearing a trench coat with a shotgun. Then we have another movie with Christian Slater, Heathers. He's shooting up kids in a school in a trench coat, and at the end he's like in the boiler room or something with a bomb, trying to blow the school up. Well, that's really similar to Columbine, and it happened before Columbine. So we have a lot of media kind of promoting, shoot your school up, and there was this one kid, I think Kip Kinkle. And
yeah.
You've heard of him? Yeah, I think he was like one of the only noticeable, or not noticeable, but one of the more prominent guys, I believe, before Columbine. I mean, I may have that wrong. I believe he occurred before Columbine. But after Columbine...
97.
97?
Yeah.
What's interesting, I believe, about Kip Kinkle is he killed his parents and then he killed some kids at school. But he said he had to do it, or he would have been killed anyway. So, I mean, I haven't researched that, but that's a little weird.
Yeah.
What we have after Columbine is definitely more. I'd say more. It's weird. It's really weird. Harris and Klebold have kind of become these celebrities. I'll give the website out because it's disgusting. There's this video game. It's called Super Columbine Massacre, and it really portrays Eric and Dylan as these badasses. Badasses shoot guys who have guns. Like the Wild West. Like they don't shoot unarmed people. Okay. But regardless, the game glorifies them, and there's like this push, and you can see it if you YouTube Columbine videos. You'll see it a lot. It's like Eric and Dylan, they were such rebels. They are not, and that's kind of ironic because actually you're not rebels. The system then uses your event to try to get guns taken away from the Americans. So you're not a rebel. That's the cruel irony of this. But people look up to these guys. These sick fuckers look up to them. And they don't want to hear. They don't want to hear there might be more shooters. They're like, no, because that would shatter their world. They basically look up to these kids. They say, yeah, they were nerds. I'm a nerd or a dork or whatever. They shot jocks and And they were bullied, and let's touch on these two issues. First of all, they didn't shoot jocks. They kind of killed indiscriminately. I mean, they just kind of shot whoever. Okay.
Yeah.
Incidentally, I'll say this. I don't want to fuel the flames that this is a Jewish conspiracy because there really is no evidence to support that. But one kid who was let go in the famous library scene which had the most deaths was a Jew, and his name's John Savage. And I've never heard any other researchers talk about him, probably maybe due to the anti-Semitism thing. But he was a quasi-TCM member, and by quasi I mean he wasn't fully in there, but he was kind of in there. And they let him go, and they killed everybody. They shot a bunch of kids. And I mean, at least by the official story, they did.
Yeah. What
I'm sorry, Pat. I kind of forgot. Yeah, they were. These people have now become icons. There's a video game out for them. It's weird. Go ahead though.
Was the guy that got away, was it the guy who got told from I like you, you better leave, or?
No, that was Brooks Brown. He was allowed to leave before anything happened, which, like I said, he's played a big role. I mean, he's kind of like living off the Columbine things. He was the one he was in bowling for Columbine and all this. And then Savage is a kid who was in the library, most likely would have got his, shotgun to the face. They let him go though. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of things we could talk about. Like how did they get these bombs in the school? Whatever you guys, there was also the videotapes. A lot of people will say, well, Jett, how can you be saying this? There's videos. Well, we could get into that. You guys got any questions, Mike, Pat?
How did they got all the bombs in the school? About 100 pipe bombs and some propane tanks.
I think I've been saying it wrong before, petroleum. But yeah, you said it right. Propane tanks. Yeah, you gotta wonder how this happened. I mean, if you have two guys with duffel bags, you're only gonna be able to fit like what? 10 pipe bombs? I mean, I don't know, but like I'm gonna assume 10. You're not gonna throw 100 pipe bombs in there and walk around with them. I mean, they're gonna blow up. They're gonna be heavy as hell. So when we look at the police reports, we see a number of students saying, I saw a trench coat kid. He didn't go to the school, but I saw him talk to Dylan Klebold or Eric Harris, and he was carrying a big, heavy duffel bag. And let's see, the prom was the 7th, I think the weekend before the shooting, which, like, the shooting took place, I think, Tuesday or Wednesday, something like that, and the prom was that Saturday or something like that. And one of the chaperones, I'm not sure if she's a teacher, said that she saw a trench coat, well, they're basically the same thing, trench coat kid talking to Klebold again, who had no business, this is her words, quote, no business being there. So that might be how some of the Pat, say it, propane.
Propane.
Yeah, there. So that might be how some of the propane tanks got in to the school during that and beforehand. Before the actual event, I would say they obviously had accomplices bringing in pipe bombs. I mean, I think there was like at least 54 exploded. I mean, that's kind of insane. 54 exploded? Like, holy shit. And, like, I think most people, if you go, yo, what about those pipe bombs in Columbine? Most people will be like, well, I think most of them were duds, weren't they? No, they actually weren't. Let's see what else we could go over just so people see how big this is in terms. We have the famous library or not library. We have the famous cafeteria footage, and this came out mainly due to as it took them 13 months to finalize their report, and they kept, what they did was, in the beginning they were like, okay, here's the people who didn't see anything. They just didn't see anything. Then they looked and they saw the people who saw something. And then they looked and saw the people who saw something that, they saw either one of these gunmen or one of these guys bringing in duffel bags. And they kept going to them and saying, yo, you saw Klebold, you saw Harris. And a lot of them were like, no, I saw Perry, I saw Brian Sargent, I saw Chris Morris. And by most reports, Chris Morris was there for only about 4 minutes, So he wasn't there that long, but others were. There's a guy on a roof, for example. Police were telling kids, keep running. There's a guy on the roof. Anyway, they released the cafeteria footage. And after that, most of the witnesses kind of were like, yeah, all right, it's Klebold and Harris. And I have no proof of this. I've heard other researchers say it. I agree with it because I've read a lot of the interviews. But I wouldn't be surprised if they... It's almost verbatim what another researcher said. They probably just falsified it, I mean, are you gonna do it? Think about it. If you're one of the witnesses, are you gonna do anything? Are you gonna be like, yo, what can you do? The police you basically know the police are covering up a mass murder. And some witnesses have said they were told they could be made to disappear. And apparently that has happened. There has been two, besides the Joe Stair suicide, there's 2 suicides. A woman, I believe her name is Anne-Marie something, I forget her last name. She was talking with investigators for 4 hours, and she saw pretty much exactly where the other shooters would have been. And the investigating officers basically hey, you read in the police report. She has a lot of information, but I think she's tired. I'm gonna call it to a halt. And you're like, well, why? And this is the mother of a victim who's recovering, And all of a sudden, she goes, this is how she committed suicide, okay? She goes to a pawn shop with ammunition she brought. She has to see a gun, loads it, and shoots herself twice in the head.
She committed suicide in the gun shop?
In the pawn shop.
Oh, in the pawn shop.
Yeah, but the thing is, with ammunition she brought. I don't know how, she should have played the lottery that day. How do you go into a pawn shop with just, the exact ammunition? The second suspicious murder it happened at a Subway, I believe near where Blackjack Pizza, where all these trench coaters worked, and I'll get to that in a minute, and we'll be pretty much done with this. But this was a Subway, and these were friends of Klebold, I believe. Klebold, Harris, Trenchcoat Mafia. I believe their names were Nicholson Kunzelman, and I forget the girl's name. And what happened was they were shot and killed in the Subway, and the manager is like, "Yeah, we always had the cameras on." And then the police go and the cameras are off. Nothing. They didn't get any surveillance of this shooting. So that's suspicious. And as I mentioned about the Blackjack Pizza, Blackjack Pizza was a place all these kids worked. Klebold, Harris. Well, I don't know if Harris. I know Harris worked there. I'm not sure if Klebold did, but Chris Morris did. One of the Erics did, something like that. And they were always, like, they had the cops called on them numerous times, but they were blowing up fireworks, pipe bombs, and behind the store. And when the ATF came to investigate the scene, they found a bullet in the ground. So most likely there was something else, you know. They were involved in a lot of shit. I'll get to now, which is probably one of the most key pieces of evidence. It's called the McDuffie affidavit. We have two students. This girl, I think her name is well, actually, I'm not sure if her name's that. The Jett is horrible with names. But anyway, we have this girl. I believe her name's Alexandra Marsh. I could be wrong on that, and she could be somebody else in this thing. We have a number, as Pat asked earlier about shootings after Columbine. We have a number of kids who went to Columbine and said, "Yo, what Eric and Dylan were heroes in Columbine." Like, they went to Columbine and they said that, and a lot of those kids were not asked to return. They were said, "You're not, don't come back." Along with like Chris Morris and other kids. And anyway, this McDuffie and Marsh basically said to investigators on the night of the shooting that if they didn't leave the Trenchcoat Mafia, I think they left it around January or something, they would have been in on it with them. So, that's foreknowledge, okay? And the McDuffie affidavit is the most amazing piece you'll ever see because it's this very neat document where it basically lists every shooter, who was there, the cars they drive, the weed or the drugs they take, the guns they own, what skills they have. Like, it wasn't just Harris involved in bomb making. And he basically gives it all up. Then in 2 days later, they come to him and he's like, "Oh, you know that thing I told you guys? Yeah, I made that all up." So, like, who got to him?
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is a very interesting event, I think. And I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts so far on what you've learned. I know it's a lot to take in.
Well, I hadn't heard about the theory that there were more shooters than two before. But, yeah. And I didn't know there was so much pipe bombs in the police report. Was it actually reported that there were about 100 pipe bombs, or?
Yes, about 100, and I believe anywhere from 34 to 54 actually exploded.
Okay.
And what's interesting here is I don't think we talked about it. The plan was to blow up the school. I know we talked about that with propane tanks, but according to a parent of a survivor or something, and people who knew Harris, there might have been more propane tanks than just two, because Harris was overheard saying to people like, "Yo, I just got paid. I'm going to buy 9 more propane tanks, and I'm trying to buy like 30. So there's probably more than 2, especially if you're trying to blow the school up. And a parent said I don't know, this is not in the police documents or anything, but he said he said there was about 12, but that's it's kind of hearsay. The Harris thing's actually in police documents that he's saving up for 12 propane tanks. Now, a lot of people are going to go, look, the other shooters weren't. They were into the occult, like I told you about the Dutro or the Eric Dutro and Stare thing. They said, they're like, we worship Satan. They went to these meetings, according to Patrick McDuffie, where they worship Satan and they do rituals and they cut themselves and they all speak in German. And there was a lot of that going on during the shootings. A lot of shit being heard in German, and like the Joe Stare thing. A lot of witnesses heard Joe in the cafeteria. Come on, Joe. Hey, Joe, I got 3 of them over here. So that's it. And at the end, the question is, like we said already, how do these low guys, these like nerds, kind of? I shouldn't say they're nerds. They were bullying other people. I mean, Klebold went up to a kid with a learning disability and it's like, I will kill you and stuff. So they weren't bullied. They were bulliers. But like,
Yeah.
how do these 2 kids end up, who aren't really in the trench coat mafia, how did they end up becoming the front, you know what I mean? The frontal of this?